Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001@twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001@twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. My history of criminal activity is long and varied. I have been a drug dealer. I have been an arms smuggler. I have been an assassin trying to take out a person who is under executive protection. I have been a hostage taker. I've been a barricaded suspect. I've been a burglar. I even robbed a Texaco station one night and hid up on Carl T. Jones and Cecil Ashburn Drive while it was under construction. I have done all kind of quote unquote evil things, and I'm not really a felon. I'm not actually guilty of any of those things, and there's no warrants after me. The federal marshals know me personally, and they're not trying to get me. You see, my role as a felon comes because of my role as a police chaplain. I'm often present when the police officers are training for different things. I'm training with the SWAT team on a regular basis, or I'm at the police academy. And I'm not a cop. I'm not a police officer. I don't have a need to know how to clear a building. I don't need to know how to do building entries. I don't need to know how to handcuff people. I don't need to know how to do felony vehicle stops. And so since the guys who are getting paid to do that are doing it, and I'm not ever going to do it, then there's a warm body for them to use. And so I let them do it to me. And so I get to train as the bad guy. And I've been hiding from the cops and running from the cops and committing these pseudo scenario crimes for a long, long time. My least favorite thing to do with the police officers is to hide from them when they're using a canine. Now, if you're hiding from them regularly, they may just clear the building and do slow clearing. Sometimes they do warrant speed. Sometimes they do hostage rescue speed, and they just burst through the building and find you. Sometimes they look for me using night vision. Sometimes they look for me and they're using a FLIR where they can see a heat signature. But I hate to hide from the canine because then they start hunting you with a dog, with a land shark, with a werewolf, with the fur missile. And I don't care where you're hiding. If you're inside, if you're outside, if you're in a building, you're in the woods, you're really not going to hide from the dog very well. Now, there are some odd scenarios and some exceptions to the rule where you can defeat the smeller on a dog, but Most of the time, you're just not going to. A dog's nose is 10,000 to 100,000 times more acute than our nose is, depending on the breed of the dog, and you're just not going to hide from them. The scent receptors that are present in their noses, they may have anywhere from 125 million to 300 million. When we breathe in a scent and then we breathe out, the scent for the most part gets expelled. But a dog has a structure inside his nose that when they breathe, that scent collects on a bony structure inside their nose, and then they accumulate the particular scent that they're looking for, and they actually become more sensitive. They develop a greater sensitivity for that one particular smell. Uh, we have a little dog named Oreo. She's a Spanish water dog, and she's got a pretty good nose. I've used her to play hide and seek with the grandkids. The kids will hide, and I'll use some piece of clothing that they've been wearing that day, and she can find the minions pretty easy. Jackie takes her to different competitions and different shows. Um, Jackie doesn't do the confirmation. Confirmation is where, the dog stands and they measure the length and they look at the legs and they look at how the dog blocks out in the size and shape of the head according to a specific standard. And Oreo's a pretty good looking dog. I mean, she's a show dog, but the reason Oreo doesn't do show dogs is because Jackie won't wear the frumpy outfits that they wear in the Eukanuba trials or the Westminster dog show. So what our dog does is she runs an agility course. It's called Fast Cat course agility training, and she does 100-yard sprint. And then Jackie's recently got her involved in doing some scent work where she tries to find, things that are hidden in boxes. Now, what we're really training her for is we eventually want to do this thing called barn hunt. And barn hunt is where the dog goes into this room and it's filled with hay bales, and hidden in the hay bales are PVC pipes that have white rats in them, and the dogs will find the rats. Now, I can't imagine this being any fun for the rat, because you spend your day, hiding in seclusion while these giant furry monsters come slobbering all over you looking for you. And so what happens is they'll put these PVC pipes in the hay, and some of the pipes have nothing in them. Some of the pipe have nesting material, and then some of the pipes have the actual white rat. And so the dog has to distinguish between this is a rat-like smell or this is an actual rat. And so when the dog finds the rat, they have to give you an alert. And some dogs bark and some dogs sit. There's all kind of things. Well, Oreo was doing a practice run. She'd never done this before. And, she's sniffing around through the hay. And, to her credit, she found all three of the white rats that were hiding there. But the first one she found, she sniffs around the nesting material, no big deal. She sniffs around an empty pipe, no big deal. She stuck her nose to that pipe where the rat was, and she jumped back like she'd been shot with electricity. It was like, it's real. And so we'll have to work on Oreo's alert signal. It's interesting that when we play these fine games or these scent games at home, there's this interesting phenomenon called being nose blind. Now, we discovered this with this little stuffed toy she has. You've got this big green stuffed worm, and we've creatively named him Wormy. And Jackie will make Oreo sit and hold, and then she'll go out into the other parts of the house and she'll hide Wormy, and she'll come back into the room and say, "Where's Wormy?" And then Oreo jumps off the couch and starts looking for this stuffed animal. Well, there's this thing that happens that she gets so intent on gaining information from her nose that she doesn't see. You can hang Wormy on a doorknob and she'll walk under that thing 2 or 3 times because she's only taking information from what she can smell, and I guess to a certain degree is ignoring what she can see. We had our friend Steve Watson used his dog Roxy to help us find a deer, and she led us in close enough to the deer that Gunner had shot that you could actually see the deer from where she was at. But she was so intent in using her nose that she failed to see the deer. I saw the buzzards in the tree and walked over to the buzzards and found the deer. Now, we wouldn't have found the deer without the dog, but the dog was only going to follow her nose and she was going to ignore her eyes. She's so focused on scent that sight is not used. Sight becomes irrelevant. And I really think the same thing can happen to us. I think that sometimes in our search for things, for truth, or where we're going to land on one side or the other, some debatable topic or some hot button issue, we can get so emotional that logic and reasoning does not apply. Or I think we can develop a sense of accumulated negative smells. We decide that this position is not good for us. We can accumulate such a sense of negative smells that we can't smell, see, or hear anything that's different. Dr. Buhlman describes this as negative sentiment override. Everything is interpreted against a backdrop of negativity. A spouse comes in with a dozen roses, and the offended spouse, the spouse that's locked into negativity, instead of saying, "Oh, thank you, you brought me roses, you must love me," she says, "You brought me roses, what did you do wrong?" Everything is interpreted based on our sensitivity, that everything we see, everything we hear, everything we smell is offensive. Jackie's really, really sensitive to the smell of gasoline. She doesn't like it. She can detect it. I think she can smell 1 part per million. I can be out in the garage working with the lawnmower or doing something, on some of my equipment, and I can put a drop, an eyedropper drop of gasoline can hit my shoe. And I come back in the house and Jackie's like, "Did you spill gas?" Well, it's not the Exxon Valdez. I have 1 drop of gas on my shoe and you can smell it. But now, once we get this blindness in any of our senses, the sensitivity in our other detectors get muted. Once we get this blindness, then all we see, all we hear, all we smell is toward that one source of input. And if I'm only using my detector for what is politically incorrect, what is racism, what is hate, what is exclusion, what is error, a lot of times in churches, you have basically, we talk about liberals and conservatives sometimes in religious circles. Well, I like to distinguish. I borrow this from a friend of mine named Aubrey Johnson. He talks about positive conservatism. Positive conservatism are people who are, biblically conservative, but we tend to celebrate what we are for. And once you understand what you're for, you by default eliminate what you're against. But sometimes there's a version of conservatism, and it's negative conservatism. And folks who suffers with negative conservatism, their senses get dulled. They focus only on the nose and they forget their eyes, or only on their eyes and they forget their nose, and they only focus on what they're against. And they learn to be so against and so outraged and give these knee-jerk reactions to things that there's a failure to discriminate between what makes you uncomfortable and what is actually unscriptural. And so because they're always looking for something to be a doctrinal issue and a reason to divide or a reason to write somebody up, they're nose blind. There's actually a measure on some of the instruments that you use in psychology. And I think it's the Milan test. And I even think there's a scale on the MMPI, and it talks about interpersonal sensitivity. And it basically like living in a perpetual state of negative sentiment override. It doesn't matter who said it. It doesn't matter how it was said. It doesn't even matter why they said it. Individuals with interpersonal sensitivity are so sure that people are against them that they can't see anything else. They can't see anything other than their hate detector identifies, hey, this person's against me. This person doesn't like me. This person's trying to get my job, or this person said what they said to me because they wanted to hurt my feelings. People with interpersonal sensitivity, they believe, hey, they hate us because we disagree with them, or they believe they're hated because they disagree with us. And they can't see the facts, that they can't override their nose blindness. If in any of our situations, if in any of the things that we interact with, whether it's religion or political correctness or even the hot topics and our social issues, if we fail to use all of our available information, if we don't have a broader set of inputs, and we're only looking to be offended or only looking for that which is offensive, then everybody's a racist and everybody is a whatever phobe. It almost seems like our society's looking for a reason to be divided. They're looking for a reason to be offended. They're looking for a reason to be triggered. I don't even like the word triggered in this context. I really do believe that we have control over what I allow to be blamed for controlling me. I don't think other people's words, I don't think other people's reactions, I don't think other people's actions have the ability to actually put me in a state where I have some kind of fit or have some kind of outrageous, uncontrollable reaction. That's what triggered means, and I'm just not really a firm believer in that. You see, if I'm nose blind, if I'm brain blind, if I'm emotionally blind, then all I'm going to get is what I'm focused on. All I'm going to get is being hurt or offended. If I'm looking to be hurt, then it doesn't matter the context. It doesn't matter the circumstance. It doesn't matter the intent. If I'm looking to feel bad about myself, then anything you say as a coach, as a spouse, as a parent, as a minister, as a counselor, as a doctor, or as a friend, it's going to quote unquote make me sad, make me scared, make me devalued, make me excluded, make me worthless, or make me just worth less. If we take the pursuit of being unhappy with work or people or church or even with ourselves, then we can't or don't actually see the truth. The truth is there, but because our senses are so focused on the negative, the offensive, then it just doesn't register. Men are especially guilty of pursuing logic when dealing with the emotions of their wives, their daughters, and their girlfriends. We have our logical nose to the ground, and we don't realize that it doesn't have to make sense to us for it to be important, special, or to be a big deal to our spouses, girlfriends, or wives. In truth, I really don't care what color you paint the wall. I don't care. But if she cares, then I care that she cares. And I get out of my logic brain and I have to show her that I care by looking at 50,000 paint squares that are essentially the same color, but some delusional neurotic has said that one is warmer and one is cooler, and that there is an appreciable difference that a person can see with the naked eye between eggshell white and white shell egg. It doesn't have to make sense to me for it to be important to her. And although my logic can't detect it, my emotions can detect her. And that's what I need to use as my sense of input. Now, it should also be pointed out that codependency in toxic relationships has a similar nose blind effect. You see, if I have an unhealthy sense of self, and that my sense of self is tied into another person's negative behavior or tied into another person's dysfunction, then I can get so focused on what I want to do for others that I can't detect what that relationship is actually doing to me. It's the same in the realm of politics and hot social topics and the things that are controversial. We get so nose blind by what we call a confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is true nose blindedness. I only focus on what we want to be true such that I can't see the truth. What I want the truth to be creates a situation where I can't see the truth. And then we surround ourselves with information or people that support our perceptions of the truth or what we want to be true. And in behaving that way, there's a principle in the way that we do things. What gets focused on gets measured. What gets measured gets repeated. What gets repeated gets ingrained. Well, if I'm looking to believe a certain way and I really don't want to know what the truth is, I just want my truth to be there, then we're looking only for the thing that confirms our bias, and we look for it at the exclusion of all other present evidence. Just look at some of the controversies in archaeology and paleontology and the things that they're finding out about the fossil record. And instead of just coming to the Occam razor conclusion that, some of this data and some of this dating could be a little bit off, we have to exclude some objective facts and say, this supports our theory. And if it doesn't support our theory, we're not even going to consider it. It's very easy to get so focused on facts, intellect, that we can ignore intuition and compassion. It's so easy to be so rigid in our interpretation of things that the letter of the law is what matters instead of the spirit of the law. It's so easy to get over-focused and thus out of focus. You see, I want to live and I want to have peace with people. I want to have peace and unity in our society. And I really believe that I would like to have unity and peace with all people, but it can't be unity at the exclusion of all other things. There are some things that are going to dictate that in order for us to have unity, we've got to come to some kind of agreement on some things. You see, we can't have unity at the compromise of morals. That's unacceptable. We can't have unity at the abandonment of reality, common sense, and objective truth. Because if we say we're going to abandon objective truth and common sense and facts in order to just everybody get along, what we're going to get is disintegration and chaos. Because if there are no rules, there are no rules. And it really doesn't matter what issue you're talking about. In any issue, religious, political, emotional, psychological, familial, in any issue, we cannot focus solely on one aspect such that we can't see the truth. We can't compromise truth. We can't deny good versus evil. We can't fail to make a distinction between right and wrong, true and false. One can deny reality, but the consequences of denying reality cannot be ignored, and the consequences of denying reality cannot be avoided. Now, if we think we can do that, then we only have ourselves to blame. We only have ourselves in the narrow focus of this unity at all cost, or peace at all cost, or inclusion at all costs. We're not going to hurt anybody's feelings at all costs. If we think we can avoid the consequences of denying reality, then when things end up worse than we hope for, whether it's our relationships, whether it's our political stances, whether it's our religious stances, it doesn't really matter. If we only focus on one thing and we become blinded to other information because we're only hyper-focused on one, then if that's the case, when things don't turn out like we want them to, then we have no one to blame but ourselves, because the truth was right there all along, right under our noses. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3Ws and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.